Hey guys, uh, so I thought I'd come back. Oops, camera's wobbly. I thought I'd come back since it's been a while, um, and tell my birth story, since that was the reason why I haven't been um, recording in the last couple of weeks. So this is Yahil. He's not happy right now. What's wrong, Papa? And he is 2 weeks old now. Um, Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. So we'll see if we can get through this with him being not too happy. Yeah. There he goes. So, as you guys can see from the title, I had an unassisted or free birth with Yahid. I'm just going to tell you how it went. One second. You might want to feed. Okay. So let's start fresh. So hey guys, so um, it's been a couple weeks, and the reason why I haven't been recording is because I have my baby. This is Yahid. He was delivered at home, unassisted, and I just want to basically come on here and tell you how that went overall. So there's some good and bad. Yeah, so let's get into it. So basically, my water broke September 1st at 1 in the morning. And I had been receiving care from a midwife. However, the midwife was not going to be delivering the baby at home. It would have been at a birthplace. That was the plan. But I did not tell her my water broke. I actually had an appointment that day. I went to the appointment. I didn't even tell her because basically once you tell them that your water breaks, you are on a clock. And with my last birth and my first birth, actually, my water always breaks early in the sense of that my water breaks, but I don't go right into labor. And a lot of times, basically, you have a certain amount of time to go into active labor, or they want to augment you. So they want to either start Pitocin or something like that to get you to having contractions so that you can have your baby. And the reason for that is risk of infection. However, I did tons of research because of my history. I'm like, I knew my water was going to break early and I wasn't going to go right into labor. And I knew that if that happened, that they were going to be pressuring me to start getting augmented due to the risk of infection. So I did tons of research on that, and I found that the main reason why women whose water breaks early, they are at a higher risk for infection because vaginal exams get done on most of these women. And one study I found that these I didn't find it, but I heard it on a podcast. That once your water breaks, you should not be really putting anything up there in your vaginal canal. And once vaginal exams were removed as a factor in a study, then the risk for infection basically plummeted to basically nothing, or didn't have a significant change in possible risk for infection in general. So that's with the research I did and the things that I found out, I really felt comfortable with not even informing my midwife, because they are expected to augment your labor. Like, they are working for the state, they're not working really for you, and so they have to follow these protocols. And so the pressure of them trying to get you to augment your labor once a certain time passes, some feel comfortable with 24, some 40, 48, and some will 72 hours will allow that. But it doesn't come without the constant reminders of your risk for infection, and you really should consider interventions at this point. And that, to me, I didn't want that experience. So I didn't tell my midwife. So my water broke on September 1st, 1 in the morning. I had my appointment that same day in September in the afternoon, and then I went home for my appointment, my prenatal appointment, and went about my day doing things I needed to do to get the house ready overall, because I had been working full time till August 31st. So literally my last day of full time work was August 31st. And then I started my maternity leave September 1st and my water broke. So didn't have much of a break in between work and having my baby, because I worked till August 31st. And so, like I said, I went about my day after the appointment. September 2nd came around, and, going back a little bit, I did have some minor contractions September 1st throughout the day. I would say they started around like 9 a.m. and then they stopped around 4 p.m. I had no contractions. I was just nothing. And so, but the contractions were never, strong. They felt like Braxton Hicks contractions for the most part. Even though they were a little more consistent than your typical Braxton Hicks contractions. So I knew, that, honestly, there was a moment where I had a couple strong surges, but nothing where I couldn't talk through them or keep moving through them. And so there were those moments where I thought maybe I might have my baby today, but it would be just, I think I only had like 2 or 3 of those, and that was it. So I quickly realized, I don't think this is going to happen today at all. So then the next day came September 2nd, and I had no contractions. I actually felt amazing. Like, I felt like I could do everything and anything. I didn't even feel pregnant. It was bizarre. Like, I felt completely invincible, honestly, in terms of energy level, in terms of physical, symptoms where my back, I had terrible back pains, and I had no back pain. I slept well. It just was like I wasn't pregnant, and no contractions. So I was like, okay, definitely not having my baby today. So I went to sleep that night, and then I woke up at midnight. So now we're September 3rd. Woke up at midnight because my son wanted to breastfeed. My 1-year-old wanted to breastfeed, and I breastfed him. My hair's in his face. Poor baby. I breastfed him at midnight, September 3rd. And within minutes of breastfeeding him, I noticed that I noticed contractions right away. And they were intense, like off the bat were intense contractions, but I could still talk to them. But they were very uncomfortable. And soon after I finished breastfeeding my 1-year-old, which was only for like maybe 5 minutes or so he breastfed, I felt this incredibly amazing yet bizarre sensation, because I never felt it with my other pregnancies or labor. And it was basically the sensation of something literally cracking open down there in my pelvic area. I don't know if it was my cervix or what it was, but I literally felt that sensation. And at that moment, it hit me like, I'm having my baby. Like, this is the beginning of this active labor that I'm about to start, and I am going to have my baby soon. So at that point, I had my kids go upstairs with my mom, and I just said, it's about to go down. And I literally my contractions kicked in really fast. Like, they just started. I'll be honest, I didn't sit there and time my contractions. I didn't really do much of any type of intervention. I kind of just let go of everything and just was I wanted to be present as possible and feel everything, just zone out of like my outside world and just completely become in tune with myself, my intuition, with my baby, with whatever was going on with my body, and just surrender to that. So I didn't time my contractions. I didn't listen to baby's heartbeats. I never felt like there was something wrong. I did have a fetal scope just in case I felt inclined to listen, but I did not use it. I never felt the desire to use it. I never felt the need to use it. So I went with that, and I did not listen to fetal heart rate. I never stopped to listen to the fetal heart rate or try to listen to through a contraction, which I don't think I could have done it anyway, to be honest with you, now that I think of it. And so I basically, are you done? Nope, he's not done. What was I saying? Yeah, so I just literally just went with the flow of it all. So I lasted, my contractions progressively got stronger and stronger, and I sensed they did get more, they did, get more, frequent. I just never actually officially timed it, right? I just noticed it. And that lasted for about 3 hours and a half. So now it's like 3:30 in the morning. And it was great because as soon as I had the kids go upstairs, my salt lamp was on already actually at that point. But I had my salt lamp on. I had I started infusing some lavender essential oil, and it was just me and my husband in the room. For whatever reason, I just wanted to labor in my bedroom, and my husband was just in and out the room. There were moments where I didn't even want him in the room, to be honest with you. I just felt, I didn't know exactly. Actually, weeks before I made the decision to have a home birth, unassisted home birth, I wasn't sure who I really even wanted present in my home, because now I had the liberty to have whomever I wanted. I wasn't restricted anymore, right? Because the hospital, there's restrictions on how many people can have, especially with COVID and everything. So at this point, when I made the decision a couple weeks before my labor, I was open to having like my grandmother and my mom and things like that. And for whatever reason, the closer I got to my due date, the less people I wanted there with me. And so I kind of went with my gut. And I thought I wanted my mom there, but then, I really needed her to watch the kids. And honestly, she was not, I knew she would be afraid to be present, to having her daughter give birth at home with all the fear that's surrounded by that in this culture. I really didn't want that energy present with in the room, because I knew she was going to be afraid, and I didn't want that to affect me, right? So I thought, I think she would be happier anyways to just be with the kids and not be so anxious and afraid being present with me. And I knew that if I really needed her, I could call her and she would be able to come, and my kids would be with, my father or something like that. But it never happened. Like I never felt afraid. It was bizarre. I thought there would have been tiny little moments here and there of maybe, fear and things like that. But it never happened. And I honestly, the desire to be more alone than with other people really took over. Like, I think he's done. So I never, so having my husband there, during moments where I wanted him there really was helpful, because when my contractions really got terribly strong, we kind of started doing a chanting. We didn't plan it. It just happened this way. He started like chanting during my contractions, and as he did that, I would chant open, 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 open. And it was my, desire for my body to just open, to just be open to whatever, to open to allow my baby to come through and to come in, into this world, to have my cervix open. And that's those were my intentions behind me chanting open, just to be open to just the experience and all that it stands for and everything about it. And so that I found super helpful. And there were moments where we would kind of, he would be chanting his chant and I'd be chanting my chant. And then we would, as we were doing that, we would our foreheads would be touching each other. And that felt very powerful. I don't know why we did it, but it just would happen that way. And when I tell you that I felt that energy change in the room, change within me, it was amazing. And it was beautiful that the fact that we didn't plan that. You know what I mean? We just went with the flow, and it felt so empowering, and it really helped me get through some terrible contractions. I really feel that. It was super helpful. It was like my pain reliever. And so yeah, by the time it was 3:30 though, I started doubting myself. I'm not gonna lie, like I wasn't afraid, but I started feeling like maybe I should go to the hospital and get some real painkillers, like because the contraction became unbearable, right? And at this point, I think I started losing it, and I started thinking I can't do this. I need some painkillers to get through the rest of this, like that kind of feeling. Not that I was afraid something bad was gonna happen, but just I was kind of getting, the contraction was so bad that I just started giving up on doing it without painkillers, honestly. So I wanted something. By 3:30, I was like, I need something now. And now in retrospect, I look back, I was in transition. Like I was literally about to give birth. So at that point, around 3:30, 3:45, I told my husband, I said, listen, I think let's just go to the hospital because I don't want to keep doing it. Like I can't keep doing it. I need something. And so he started getting stuff ready. And then I would say minutes after I said that to him, minutes after I gave up and said, let's go, I was on my bed and I flipped over onto the floor, like just like animalistic, like acrobatic flipping onto the floor. It was bizarre when I think about how I did that with everything that I was feeling, and I had the power to just like throw myself, flip over like a feline. I just felt so animalistic. It was beautiful. And I flipped over into a squatting position. I just landed that way. Like literally just landed just flipped over and landed in the squatting position with my hands touching the ground. And I just roared like a roar that came from the deep down inside of me somewhere, pit bottom, right? And minutes prior to that, I felt like I wanted to push. Like I just felt like I need to start pushing. But I did doubt myself because I wasn't sure if I started thinking, but what if I'm not 100%, 10 centimeters dilated yet? So I didn't push. And because in the back of my head I said, when my baby's ready to come, there's nothing I can do to stop him from coming. Like, because I'm so ready for him. And I believe that. And so I didn't push. But once I flipped over onto that ground, into that squatting position, my body started pushing. And I started making the sounds of pushing, but I honestly was not pushing. Like, I just couldn't resist the urge to push. It was this body taking over, and I just surrendered, and I started pushing. At this point, I was by myself in the room, and it was bizarre because I didn't care to have somebody there with me in that moment. Like I was completely lost within myself that I didn't even care if somebody was there or not. I just felt like I was okay. Like everything was perfect, right? Just how it was. There was no need for me to stop, intervene, call somebody to come over. I didn't care. And so at one point, my husband comes into the room and he notices that I'm now in a squatting position and that I'm pushing. And at some point, he was behind me. I noticed that he got on the floor too and looked, and he saw the head. And I remember knowing the head came out already, but I was just by myself in the room, just feeling on my baby's head in a squatting position by myself, and just fully fine. Just everything was perfect. And by the time he saw it, I already knew it. But he started saying, the head's out already, keep pushing, keep going. And so he started having, calling, words of action out. But I didn't listen to him. I just stayed completely in tune to my body and let my body do the work that it wanted to do, right? And I pushed maybe another few times, maybe like less than 5 times. and my baby came out, and he started crying instantly. And that was that. It was, and I just sat there with my baby on the floor, my bedroom floor, and just was in complete amazement at the fact that this is exactly what I always envisioned labor should feel like, and a delivery should feel like and be like. This is exactly what intuitively I desired and knew I wanted, and this is how it should have been. And so I sat there for a good, like, I guess it was about 30 minutes or so, and just held my baby and enjoyed him, and just was in the moment. And I really wanted to deliver my placenta at home, but it had yet to come. And I did notice that I was starting to have a nice amount of bleeding. Considering with my background, I'm a postpartum nurse, and I did have to assist in some labors in my previous job. So, it wasn't like significant enough where I was completely afraid, like, oh my God, I'm hemorrhaging right now. But it was enough for me to say I should be assessed by a doctor, right? Just to make sure. And that was a plan anyways. Oh, Papa. Hola, papito, ya. That was the plan anyways, to go to the doctor, to the hospital after the labor. Just, just make sure everything's fine, and that was it. So about a half hour or so after that, 40 minutes or so, we got in the car, me and the baby and my husband, and we went to the hospital. And we got there, and, the whole energy shifted. Once you go to the hospital, everything changes. You kind of start losing control, losing your power, because they kind of take over, right? That's just the name of the game, honestly, I feel, with the hospitals. They kind of take control. They have to make judgment calls. They have to make recommendations, and they kind of want to, make sure that nothing goes wrong, right? They're kind of on that, making sure, intervening to make sure nothing happens, whether it's 100% necessary or if it's, preventative, just in case type of situation. So we got there, and they tried to take my baby away as soon as we got there and cut the cord. And I kind of had to say, no, I don't want that. I want to keep the cord on. I'm not feeling ready to disconnect baby from the cord. And I told the nurse practitioner, if you want to assess the baby, you can do it on me. And, I noticed right off the bat, people were giving each other stares. Like, we were looking at each other like, what is going on? Why is, like, this is weird, right? Because normally people go and they just do as they're told for the most part. Like, yep, go ahead. And, it was a unique situation because I delivered at home. So, of course, they're more on edge because they're nervous. They want to make sure everything's okay since they weren't there to witness everything was okay. So, I understand that. Like, I would totally respect that. But I, I knew in my heart that my baby was fine. And in terms of my health, I did know, I was there. I wanted them to make sure that I wouldn't hemorrhage. And they wanted me to deliver my placenta sooner than later because it had been, at this point, over an hour and a half at this point. And so I kind of refused any interventions to get that going. I tried to push the placenta out, and what happened was I ended up having quite a few very large clots come out, to the point they thought one of the clots was the placenta, and it wasn't. It was a clot. So, that it was concerning for sure. However, I still wanted to hold off on interventions, and I did refuse Pitocin and things like that to get things going. And, they brought in the OB doctor. And, she made her recommendations, and I basically said that I wanted to breastfeed my baby and continue skin to skin in order to help stimulate that process for delivering the placenta. And if nothing happened within 30 minutes, then I'd be open to starting medical interventions. So we agreed on that plan. She was very respectful. I'm so grateful for her. And we went with that. And then 10 minutes after she left, the OB left, I started having symptoms of passing out, like I was about to pass out. So at this point, I got afraid because I'm a nurse. I know the symptoms of passing out, and I just became afraid because it's different once you're experiencing something. Because I never experienced that before, passing out, and I really got afraid. it was feeling like I was things were just getting really far away from me, and I felt small compared to everybody else because they just kind of felt like they were large. And I kind of, the when the TV has like that static screen when there's no reception, and it's like this static crackly sound. That's what I was like starting to see everywhere. Like everything was that in and out, right? And I started getting really hot and sweaty. I was really clammy, and I got afraid. So I looked at the nurse next to me because she was in the room, and I said, I don't feel good. Let's start the Pitocin. And I told her what I was feeling, and she said, okay, no worries, I'm going to go to the doctor. So they went and got the doctor, and the doctor came in and said, you know what, because you're symptomatic at this point, I think we should just go ahead and remove the placenta manually since it hasn't come, just to make sure you're not hemorrhaging behind that placenta. And at that point, when you feel like that, when you feel like you're dying, quite frankly, you give in to whatever, because at this point, I need to make sure I'm okay for my kids, right? And for myself. So I said, let's do it. Whatever it is we need to do, let's do it. She asked me if I wanted a blood transfusion. I said, I only want it if it's a life or death situation. That's the only reason why I would want the blood transfusion. So I signed paperwork, and we went back to the OR, and it was a scary situation because you just have your baby. You don't want to deal with, oh my God, the lights and all these people with masks, and they're looking at you, and they're just, it's just a very sterile and cold environment. Like it was terrible, but it was necessary, right? We did it, and the placenta was removed manually. So I unfortunately could not deliver my placenta naturally, but it's okay. I accepted that, and it's okay, right? And then I got out. Once they removed the placenta manually, I felt much better. I did end up almost passing out when I did try to go to the bathroom for the first time, but that was expected. They said I lost about 1,400 liters of blood, which is quite a bit, for sure. Because we didn't even calculate how much I lost at home. So I'm sure it was a little bit more than that. And so basically, but after that episode of almost passing out post removal of placenta, I just started feeling tons better. I drank tons of water and started drinking smoothies with, iron rich foods in it. And I started feeling better. And we stayed there the night, and we went home the next day. Okay. But yeah, so that was basically my labor and delivery story. And I have to say it was a beautiful labor and delivery of my son. Not so much for my placenta, unfortunately. But at least I'm so happy and grateful that I had able to bring him into this world on his terms, and not, force him out and things like that, and just went with whatever felt right? And just, it was a very empowering, beautiful, just powerful experience that I will never forget, and I'm so grateful I got to experience. And home birth, especially unassisted, may not be for everybody, for sure. Some people would not feel safe in that kind of situation, and that if you don't feel safe like that, then you wouldn't want to do that. If you feel safer in a hospital, then that's where you need to be to have your baby. You need to be and have the labor and delivery that you feel would be safest for you. So I just recommend that if you are considering having a home birth, especially an unassisted home birth, to please do tons of research. You have to really educate yourself to make sure that you're making the best decision for you and your family, okay? If you have any questions or concerns, please, or comments, just leave them below, and I will be more than happy to look over them and address them, for sure. If there's any questions, or you'd like me to do another video on something more detailed in regards to what I talked about during this video, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to do that. So thanks for listening. I hope this wasn't too long, and take care, and yeah, adios, bye.